Hello, my name is John Bannon. I'm an attorney and philosopher. In today's video, I'm going to explain how superdeterminism destroys Epicurus. This video is what they failed to teach you in college philosophy class about the philosophy of Epicurus. When I talk about superdeterminism, I'm referring to a very specific version of superdeterminism known as Hansonian superdeterminism. It is based on the proof of Swedish theoretical physicist Dr. Johan Hansen, published in the peer-reviewed physics journal Physics Essays, Volume 33, Number 2, June of 2020, pages 216 to 218. It is entitled Bell's Theorem and Its Tests, Proof that Nature is Superdeterministic, Not Random. Hansonian superdeterminism is not classic superdeterminism, which was first posited by Dr. John Bell in 1985, because classic superdeterminism uses hidden causal variables, whereas Hansonian superdeterminism disproves causation itself, so it cannot rely on hidden causal variables. Rather, Hansonian superdeterminism says we live in three dimensions of space and one hidden static dimension of time in a fourth dimensional block universe. And in this block universe, the only thing there is besides nothing is particles. And those particles or events are set like pebbles in concrete through the dimension of time. You can't move them, you can't change them, they are permanent. However, these particles do create patterns through the dimension of time, which we describe by our logical mathematical laws of physics. So, under Hansonian superdeterminism, every event in the block universe, whether past, present, or future, is equally real, and they all presently exist in the block universe, and they're permanent, and you can't change them. So you from 5 minutes ago still exists, experiencing 5 minutes ago, and you from 5 minutes in the future exists right now, experiencing 5 minutes from 5 minutes in the future. The only difference is your present experience is in a particular location in the static dimension of time. And that location is not in the past nor in the present. And that's why, I'm sorry, or in the future. And that's why you don't experience presently the past or the future. However, that doesn't mean they're not there. They are. They have to be without cause and effect in physics, because the present events cannot cause future events without cause and effect in physics. But future events nevertheless arrive, which means the future must already exist. It's not caused into being. And if it already exists, it has to be in a hidden static dimension of time, because where else would it be? All right, so I've listed 6 points of the philosophy of Epicurus on the board, and I'm going to go through each of the points and show you how Hansonian superdeterminism disproves it. So, number 6, there is no objective sin or evil other than pain itself. However, under Hansonian superdeterminism, because all the events of the past, present, and future are all equally real, and they all exist, and they were predetermined because the block universe was atemporally created, then Christianity itself is a permanent aspect of the static block universe. It was predetermined. And because Christianity is the predominant world religion by total number of members throughout history, one can reasonably infer that God predetermined Christianity to be the predominant world religion because it was true. This was God's true message to humanity. And because of that, you can reasonably infer that Christian teaching on objective morals and sin is true. And therefore, under Hansonian superdeterminism, there is a reasonable basis to claim the objective existence of sin and evil. Now, our block universe was atemporally created. That means created outside of space time. In other words, the block universe was created uh, in a simultaneous act in which the whole block universe came into existence from nothing. But because nothing doesn't have the power to create anything due to the absence of cause and effect in physics, then the block universe would have to be created by God, who has the power to create block realities. And because God would have to know of and understand everything in the block universe before he made it, in order to make it, then that means God would have to know and understand the most advanced technologies that exist in the block universe, which means God would have to be supremely intelligent by definition. So there's plenty of good reasons to believe that the block universe was atemporally created. However, I'll give you one good argument. Now, if you think about a particle, a real particle, what is it? There's a particle for you. It's a boundary. There's the particle and what is not the particle. So, because it has a boundary, then it cannot be a necessary being. Because if it was a necessary being, it would necessarily exist everywhere, not just here. It would also necessarily exist here and over there. But it doesn't exist over here and over there, only there, which means it cannot be a necessary being. Well, if it's not a necessary being, then it must be contingent. It must be created by something else. Well, because our static block universe doesn't have cause and effect in physics in it, then it can't be caused to exist because there's no physical causation. So that requires a God with the power to atemporally create this particle from non-existence. So particle physics itself implies the atemporal creation of our static block universe. All right, number 5. Atoms move autonomously through the void. Now, of course, under Hansonian superdeterminism, Epicurus was wrong. Atoms do not move. In our static block universe, particles are set in place like pebbles in concrete through the static dimension of time. They don't move. There's no cause and effect in physics that can cause a particle to move. Consequently, they cannot move. And there is no moving time either. So this is clearly wrong under Hansonian superdeterminism. Number 4, death is nothing to us. So Epicurus said that when we exist, death is not present. When we are dead, we no longer exist to experience it. So death is nothing to us. However, under Hansonian superdeterminism, this is false. And the reason is because we all have what I call block lives in the static block universe. All the events in our life from birth to death are permanent and exist now and always exist in the static block universe, which means your entire life exists as a permanent, immortal information packet of your body's particles through the static dimension of time. So the idea that we stop existing at death is completely false. Our block life, our information packet does not stop existing. It's permanent. Death is simply past one heel end of our information packet. So our information packet is no longer in that location of the static dimension of time. So we don't consciously experience it because our conscious body parts aren't in that location of the dimension of time. So a block life has two ends or heels. One begins with your birth and the other one ends with your death. They enclose this information packet or block life that is your immortal block life in the static block universe. And I say immortal because your block life, although finite in duration uh, within the static dimension of time, is nevertheless permanent, which means it's immortal. It's not going anywhere, and nothing can remove it or change it. Number three, truth is verified by the mind through the senses. This is false under Hansonian superdeterminism because the mind does not operate independently through its own processes because it can't without cause and effect in physics. It can't produce anything without cause and effect in physics. It's merely a static pattern of brain particle positions through the dimension of time. It is not an independent thinking machine external to the world. Um, so the mind is not an independent process for truth verification due to the lack of cause and effect in physics. Number two, all sensations accurately report the physical interaction between our sensory organ and the external object. However, under Hansonian superdeterminism, sensations are not physical interactions due to the lack of cause and effect in physics, but rather physical our senses, our conscious awareness is actually a physical reality and an aspect of our static block universe. It's not a separate thing that has its own reality external to the block itself. Um, it's not involved in an interaction. Interaction means cause and effect. It means one thing influences another thing independently. But there is no such thing as that independent influencing of things in a predetermined static block universe without cause and effect in physics. Um, our conscious thoughts are physical realities. And I'll give you an example. Let's say you consciously decide to move your arm. Now, your arm movement is undeniably a physical reality, but that arm movement must exist in the future as a predetermined future event, which means that your conscious decision to move your arm must also be predetermined in order for your arm movement to be predetermined. Now, the only physical thing that exists where our conscious thoughts are brain particles, which mean, well, and brain particles are physical realities, which can be predetermined in the physical universe, which means that the predetermined organization and changes in brain particles through the static dimension of time must be what leads to our predetermined conscious experiences. Now, it's a mystery as to why consciousness is a physical reality when our experience of it is immaterial. But if I were to guess, I would say this. Um, you can tell because our universe, our physical universe, follows logical mathematical laws of physics, that the physical universe is logic, the physical universe. So if logic is capable of creating this reality that we call our universe, then why can't it create a different reality using a different form of logic that we experience as consciousness? So, due to the organization of brain particles, which is very complicated through the static dimension of time, the brain creates a different form of logic, which I call the logic of the possible. And because it's a different form of logic, it must have a different reality in which to exist. And that reality is what we experience as immaterial consciousness. However, it is still a derivative of the physical brain particles. So it is still a physical reality, just a different form of a reality based on a different form of logic. All right, number one, the meaning of life is the achievement of pleasure, meaning the absence of pain and mental distress. Under Hansonian superdeterminism, the meaning of life cannot be pleasure, meaning the absence of pain or mental distress, because that's a potential. Um, in our static block universe, every living thing has a block life, and that block life contains all the events in their life. If the universal meaning of life were some potential, let's say X, and X did not appear in someone's block life, then it is meaningless to say to them that the meaning of their life is X, because X doesn't occur in their block life, and there's no chance it ever could due to the lack of cause and effect in physics. You can't change your block life, it's permanent. You're stuck with it, whatever it is. The only universal meaning of life is something that all living human beings have, which is a block life. So the universal meaning of life is the role your predetermined block life plays in the predetermined static block universe, which was predetermined and planned out by God. So the universal meaning of life is the role your predetermined life plays in God's plan for the universe and human history. Okay, I hope you learned something. I'll give you a second to read the board. Okay, until next time, take care.